Hello, beautiful Capricorn. Welcome back, my dear friend. I'm really happy you're here today because this reading carries a very gentle yet powerful feeling. It feels like July isn't simply another month on the calendar. It almost feels like a quiet doorway opening after you've been standing in the same hallway for much longer than you expected. Before we begin, if you enjoy these heartfelt tarot readings, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below telling me your zodiac sign, or simply share what your heart has been carrying lately. I always love reading your stories, and your energy truly helps shape this beautiful community we've created together. Okay, let's slow everything down, take a comfortable breath, and see where these cards want to lead us today. The very first card resting on the table is the Fool. Capricorn, this is interesting. You usually don't rush toward uncertainty. You're someone who likes to know where every road leads before taking the first step. You build plans. You measure risks. You think several moves ahead. Yet the Fool arrives anyway, almost smiling as if to remind you that sometimes life quietly prepares a new chapter long before you realize the old one has already ended. It doesn't feel like chaos. It doesn't even feel dramatic. Instead, it feels surprisingly peaceful, almost like waking up one morning and realizing the weight you've been carrying doesn't feel quite as heavy anymore. As I continue laying the cards down, Ace of Swords appears beside the Fool, and something shifts immediately. The energy becomes clearer. It feels like words that have remained trapped inside someone's heart may finally begin searching for daylight. There could be a conversation approaching that doesn't need perfect timing. It simply needs honesty. I wouldn't be surprised if someone has been replaying old conversations over and over in their mind. Maybe they keep wondering whether they should reach out. Maybe they're practicing what they would say before sending a message they keep deleting. And somehow, Capricorn, your energy seems to sense this before anything actually happens. You're not chasing it. You're not waiting by the phone. You're simply living your life. Yet something inside you has begun noticing little signs that feel difficult to explain. Maybe certain memories return without warning. Maybe someone's name suddenly appears in unexpected places. Maybe your dreams have become strangely vivid lately. It feels subtle, quiet, almost invisible. Then Ace of Cups gently joins the reading. Oh my God, this doesn't feel rushed at all. It feels careful, like someone who has finally grown tired of pretending they don't care anymore. The emotion here doesn't seem loud enough to overwhelm you. And maybe that's exactly why Capricorn might trust it more this time. Because deep down, you've learned something important. Big promises don't impress you anymore. Consistency does. Peace does. Effort does. The cards almost smile at that realization. It feels like the universe, or perhaps simply the flow of life, is bringing someone closer who understands that actions speak much louder than beautifully written words. That doesn't mean you'll immediately open every door. Actually, I see quite the opposite. Capricorn stands there with remarkable calmness. You observe. You listen. You notice what people do when nobody is asking them to prove themselves. There's something incredibly attractive about that energy. It isn't cold, it isn't distant, it's simply wise. The Chariot now enters the spread, and suddenly the entire reading begins moving forward. Not fast, just intentionally. It feels like someone has finally decided they can no longer stay frozen between fear and hope. Whether this person is someone returning from your past or someone entirely unexpected, the movement feels genuine. I keep hearing one quiet sentence repeating in my mind. I don't want to lose this opportunity. Maybe those words belong to someone thinking about you. Maybe they're words your own heart hasn't fully admitted yet. Either way, the energy feels alive. Capricorn, you've spent so much time becoming stronger that sometimes people mistake your strength for emotional distance. But these cards don't see distance. They see someone who has learned the value of protecting peace. Someone who understands that not every invitation deserves an answer. Someone who knows that real love shouldn't constantly leave you wondering where you stand. Yeah, that feels important. As the cards continue speaking together, I notice something else. You're no longer trying to convince anyone to stay. You're no longer trying to solve every misunderstanding before it even happens. There's a quiet confidence surrounding you now. It isn't loud confidence, it's the kind that grows after disappointment teaches lessons no book ever could. And perhaps that's exactly what makes your energy different this July. Someone notices. Someone who may have overlooked your value before suddenly begins seeing everything much more clearly. Not because you've changed who you are, but because you've stopped chasing validation that was never yours to earn. The beautiful thing is, the Fool keeps looking toward the future instead of the past. Ace of Swords keeps inviting honest conversation. Ace of Cups continues opening space for emotion without pressure. And the Chariot keeps reminding both hearts that standing still forever isn't really living. So if something unexpected begins unfolding around you this month, don't feel like you need to rush toward an answer. Sometimes the strongest response is allowing life to reveal one small piece at a time. Because as these cards continue unfolding, it feels like this new beginning is only showing its very first page. There is something about the world that settles onto the table so quietly that you almost don't notice it at first. It doesn't ask for attention. It simply sits there like an old photograph tucked inside a drawer you haven't opened in years. The energy feels familiar, Capricorn. Not because you're still living in that chapter, but because a part of your heart still remembers how much it took to finally close it. I keep sensing that this wasn't just a relationship that slowly faded away. It feels like something you genuinely believed could become part of your future. You weren't imagining temporary moments. You were imagining shared mornings, familiar routines, conversations that would still matter years later. When the world appears beside Five of Pentacles, it almost feels as though two people slowly drifted onto different paths while neither of them truly understood how it happened. Someone may have walked away, someone may have stayed emotionally distant, or perhaps life itself created a distance neither of you knew how to cross. Whatever the reason was, the silence that followed seems to have spoken louder than any argument ever could. Then Ten of Swords quietly reveals itself. Yeah. This card doesn't arrive with dramatic music or loud emotions today. It feels more like remembering the exact moment you realized you couldn't keep carrying everything by yourself. Capricorn, people often admire your strength because you rarely allow the world to see how deeply something affects you. You continue working, you continue showing up. You continue taking care of responsibilities while your heart quietly processes everything behind closed doors. Sometimes people mistake that resilience for not feeling anything, but the cards don't tell that story. They show someone who felt everything. Simply in private, there may have been nights when you kept replaying conversations in your mind, wondering whether you missed something important. Maybe you questioned yourself more than you questioned the other person. Maybe you searched for explanations that never truly arrived. The energy suggests that one of the hardest lessons wasn't losing someone, it was learning that closure doesn't always come from another person's apology. Sometimes it grows slowly inside your own heart. Four of Swords enters the reading, almost like a long exhale. It feels peaceful, not because the pain disappeared overnight, because you finally gave yourself permission to stop fighting it. I keep seeing someone sitting near a window early in the morning with a warm cup of coffee, watching sunlight slowly fill the room without feeling the need to rush anywhere. Healing rarely announces itself. One day, you simply realize you've stopped checking your phone every few minutes. You stop wondering whether they're thinking about you. You begin noticing little things that make you smile again. A favorite song, fresh air after the rain, a quiet afternoon that doesn't feel lonely anymore. Those moments seem small, but they're actually enormous. They're the moments that quietly rebuild a heart. Then justice appears, and everything becomes remarkably calm. Not because every question has been answered, because your expectations have changed. Capricorn, it feels like you've become much more honest with yourself than you used to be. You no longer confuse someone's potential with their actual effort. You no longer fill empty spaces with hopeful assumptions. Instead, you observe, you pay attention, you allow people to reveal themselves over time. That feels incredibly important, because right beside justice, I see Seven of Swords. Oh, there is still a memory here that occasionally whispers. Maybe someone wasn't completely transparent. Maybe certain truths stayed hidden until much later. Maybe promises sounded beautiful but never became reality. Whatever happened, it left behind something much deeper than disappointment. It changed the way you protect your heart. But here's what feels different today. The Seven of Swords doesn't seem to hold power over you anymore. It feels more like a reminder, a quiet reminder that intuition deserves to be trusted. That uncomfortable feeling you once ignored, you probably wouldn't ignore it today. You've learned too much. You've grown too much. And because of that growth, the energy surrounding you feels incredibly grounded. The final card slowly turns over. The Tower. Okay, this one surprises me, not because it brings fear, because it carries honesty. Looking at these cards together, it almost feels like whatever collapsed in the past had already begun cracking long before anyone admitted it. Sometimes people believe everything changed in one single moment, but the energy suggests it had been changing quietly for a long time. Tiny disappointments, small misunderstandings, conversations left unfinished, feelings left unspoken. Eventually, everything became too heavy to continue pretending. Strangely enough, Capricorn, I don't feel regret sitting beside the tower. I feel gratitude, not immediate gratitude, the kind that only arrives after enough time has passed. Because if that chapter hadn't fallen apart, you might never have discovered how much strength was quietly waiting inside you. You became more patient, more discerning, more protective of your peace. You stopped asking whether someone wanted you. You started asking whether their presence actually brought peace into your life. That question changed everything. It feels like your heart has become much quieter over time. Not colder, just wiser. And as these cards settle into place, I can't help but notice there's another energy lingering just beyond this chapter, almost as though someone has been watching your transformation from much closer than you realize. Knight of Pentacles quietly steps into the reading, and everything begins to slow down in the most comforting way. It doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel impulsive. It almost feels like someone has spent a very long time thinking before taking even the smallest step toward you. Capricorn, that energy feels familiar because you're someone who values consistency far more than excitement. Grand gestures may catch your attention for a moment, but steady effort is what stays in your heart. I keep feeling that whoever this person is, they haven't forgotten what once existed between the two of you. Distance may have separated your paths for a while, whether emotionally, physically, or simply through life's circumstances, but the connection itself doesn't feel completely erased. Instead, it feels like a quiet thread that neither of you intentionally cut. It's interesting because the cards don't show desperation. They show reflection. Almost as if someone has finally realized that time alone couldn't answer the questions they kept avoiding. As I place another card beside it, the moon appears, and the atmosphere becomes beautifully mysterious. Not confusing, just deeply emotional. It feels like both of you have experienced moments where words simply weren't enough. There may have been feelings that neither side knew how to express, without risking even more disappointment. Sometimes silence isn't created because people stop caring. Sometimes silence appears because caring too much becomes frightening. The energy suggests that someone has been carrying emotions they rarely speak about. Perhaps they wonder how you would react if they reached out. Perhaps they replay your last conversation before falling asleep. Perhaps they imagine seeing your name appear on their phone more often than they would ever admit. Capricorn, I also feel your own intuition becoming much sharper here. You may notice little things without understanding why. A familiar song, an unexpected memory, a dream that feels unusually vivid, a strange sense that someone is thinking about you at the exact moment you begin thinking about them. Yeah, life has a funny way of creating moments that logic can't always explain. Then Eight of Pentacles gently settles onto the table. Oh, I like this energy, because it feels practical, grounded, real. This doesn't feel like someone trying to impress you with beautiful speeches. It feels like someone quietly asking themselves how they can become a better partner than they were before. Whether this is someone from your past or someone whose feelings have been growing slowly over time, the energy seems focused on effort rather than fantasy. Capricorn, you've always respected people who show up consistently. Not perfectly, just consistently. That's why this card feels so significant. Actions begin speaking louder than emotions. Small gestures begin carrying more meaning than dramatic declarations. Someone may start finding little reasons to stay connected. A message that feels simple. A conversation that lasts longer than expected. A question that sounds ordinary but carries much deeper intentions underneath. Then I see Page of Swords, and I can't help but smile a little. It feels like someone is paying much closer attention to you than you realize. Maybe they've been quietly watching your journey. Maybe they notice how much you've changed. Maybe they admire the way you've learned to protect your peace without closing your heart completely. I wouldn't be surprised if this person occasionally checks your social media or wonders how you're doing without actually saying anything. Not from obsession, more from curiosity mixed with admiration. They're trying to understand the version of Capricorn standing before them today. Because you aren't the same person you were before. The cards know that. They know you've become softer in some ways, stronger in others. High Priestess appears almost effortlessly, and the entire reading grows quieter. This feels like your inner voice becoming impossible to ignore. Capricorn, you've reached a place where you don't need immediate answers anymore. You observe, you listen, you allow people to reveal themselves naturally. There's something incredibly peaceful about that. Instead of asking, do they love me, your heart seems to ask something much wiser. Do I feel safe being myself around them? That's a completely different question. And somehow, it changes everything. Strength joins the spread, bringing a calm confidence that doesn't need to prove itself. It feels like you've learned that vulnerability isn't weakness. Neither is patience. Real strength sometimes looks like waiting long enough to see whether someone's intentions remain the same after the excitement fades. That lesson seems to have become part of who you are. If this person truly wishes to rebuild something meaningful, they'll probably need to meet you in that quiet space where trust grows slowly. Not because you're testing them, because your heart simply deserves that kind of care. Finally, Eight of Wands arrives, and I can almost feel the energy beginning to move. Not chaotically, more like a river that has finally found its direction after winding through unfamiliar terrain. Communication seems closer than it once was. Distance feels shorter somehow. The silence that once stretched endlessly between two people begins feeling much less permanent. Still, Capricorn, you're not reaching for certainty before it's time. You're allowing every conversation, every gesture, every choice to reveal its own truth naturally. And somewhere within that gentle unfolding, it feels like one simple interaction may carry far more meaning than either heart initially expects. Seven of Pentacles settles into the reading with a quiet kind of patience. And Capricorn, I can't help but feel that your heart has reached a place where it's no longer reacting, it's evaluating. There's a meaningful difference between those two things. It feels like you've stepped back just enough to see the entire picture instead of only the emotions inside it. You're no longer asking whether this connection can survive one beautiful conversation. You're asking whether it can grow into something that still feels safe, honest, and steady months from now. I keep hearing this gentle thought repeating itself. Take your time. That feels important. Not because you're afraid of moving forward, but because you've learned that some decisions deserve silence before they deserve an answer. As Five of Wands appears beside the Seven of Pentacles, the energy shifts ever so slightly. It doesn't feel like a dramatic argument waiting to happen. It feels more like old tension that has never completely dissolved. Maybe there were misunderstandings that lingered beneath the surface. Maybe outside opinions became louder than the voices inside the relationship. Or perhaps both of you were carrying personal battles that quietly spilled into the connection without either of you realizing it. The energy suggests that what once stood between you wasn't always a lack of love. Sometimes it was timing, sometimes pride, sometimes fear. Sometimes two people trying to protect themselves so carefully that neither one felt truly seen. Capricorn, you don't seem interested in reopening old wounds simply to prove who was right. That chapter feels finished. What matters now is whether someone is willing to take responsibility for what happened instead of pretending it never existed. That alone changes the entire energy, because accountability feels much more attractive to you than perfection ever could. Then Wheel of Fortune slowly turns across the table, and I have to smile. Yeah, life has an incredible way of surprising us after we've stopped trying to control every outcome. This card doesn't feel loud. It feels like invisible doors quietly unlocking. Conversations that once seemed impossible suddenly become natural. Distance begins feeling smaller. Coincidences become difficult to ignore. You may even notice yourself crossing paths with someone in ways that feel almost too perfectly timed to dismiss. I wouldn't be surprised if you begin wondering whether certain moments are happening for a reason, not because everything is destined, simply because life sometimes reconnects people after they've become different versions of themselves. The energy feels much healthier than before, not because the past disappears, because both hearts seem to understand it differently. Then King of Pentacles arrives, and Capricorn, this card almost feels like it belongs to you. There's a grounded confidence surrounding your energy. You don't seem interested in temporary excitement anymore. You've reached a place where emotional consistency feels incredibly valuable. You want someone whose words still carry meaning weeks later, someone who shows up even when life becomes inconvenient, someone whose presence brings calm instead of confusion. It feels like you finally realize that love shouldn't constantly leave you guessing. Love should gradually make life feel more peaceful. That realization seems to have become one of your greatest strengths. The interesting part is that someone else appears to notice this change as well. They may recognize that you're no longer willing to settle for half-hearted effort. The version of Capricorn standing before them today carries quiet standards instead of silent expectations. There's no need to chase, no need to convince, no need to prove your worth. Your energy already speaks for itself. Ten of Pentacles gently joins the spread, and the atmosphere becomes incredibly warm. Oh my God. This doesn't feel like fantasy. It feels like possibility. I can almost picture two people sitting together after a long day, sharing ordinary moments that somehow feel extraordinary because they're built on trust. Simple conversations over dinner, weekend routines, supporting one another through both victories and disappointments. The energy isn't asking for perfection. It's asking for partnership. Real partnership. The kind that grows stronger through everyday choices instead of dramatic declarations. Capricorn, I feel that this is what your heart has been searching for all along. Not constant excitement, not emotional uncertainty, just someone who genuinely wants to build a life beside you, rather than simply visit it from time to time. Then Four of Wands appears, and the entire reading softens. It feels like stability, quietly stepping into the room. A place where both people can finally breathe, without wondering whether everything might disappear tomorrow. If this connection continues unfolding with honesty, patience, and mutual effort, it seems capable of becoming something beautifully lasting. Still, your heart remains wonderfully balanced. You're no longer measuring love by promises. You're measuring it by consistency, by respect, by emotional safety. If this person continues showing you who they are through steady actions, you'll naturally begin opening doors that once remained carefully closed. If they don't, the energy suggests you'll walk forward with the same quiet dignity you've worked so hard to reclaim. Either way, Capricorn, you're no longer standing at a crossroads wondering which version of yourself to choose. You're choosing yourself first. And strangely enough, that's exactly when everything around this connection begins to feel different. Almost as though one final truth has been waiting patiently beneath the surface, ready to reveal itself when the timing feels just right. Death arrives so gently that, for a moment, it almost feels like the room itself becomes quieter. Capricorn, I don't sense fear around this card. I sense relief. The kind of relief that comes after carrying something for far too long before finally realizing you don't have to carry it anymore. Yeah, this feels deeply personal, not because someone else is changing your life, but because something inside you has already begun changing long before anyone noticed. There comes a season when the heart grows tired of repeating the same story, the same disappointment, the same unanswered questions, the same hope that somehow things will become different without anyone actually choosing differently. It feels like you've reached the edge of that season. Not with anger, not with bitterness, simply with clarity. The energy suggests that you're beginning to understand something beautiful. Sometimes letting go isn't losing. Sometimes letting go is creating enough space for something healthier to finally arrive. As the sun slowly appears beside death, the entire reading begins to glow with a warmth that feels incredibly genuine. Oh my God! This isn't the kind of happiness that depends on another person showing up exactly the way you imagined. It feels much quieter than that. It feels like waking up one morning and realizing your peace has become stronger than your fear. There is something incredibly attractive about a Capricorn who no longer feels the need to force anything. You smile more naturally, you breathe more deeply, you trust yourself more completely. People notice that. Whether they say it out loud or not, they notice. Someone who once underestimated your value may suddenly begin seeing you through completely different eyes. Not because you've become someone else, because you've stopped shrinking yourself to make other people comfortable. That shift changes everything. The cards almost whisper that genuine confidence has a way of attracting genuine people. Not everyone will understand your boundaries, but the ones who truly belong won't be afraid of them. They'll respect them. Then Six of Swords quietly moves across the table like a calm river flowing toward a new horizon. Capricorn, I keep seeing emotional baggage becoming lighter. Not disappearing completely, just becoming easier to carry, until one day you realize you've already put it down. Maybe you'll forgive someone, maybe you'll simply stop needing answers. Maybe you'll decide that your future deserves more attention than your past. Whatever form it takes, the movement feels peaceful. You're not running away from anything, you're walking toward yourself. There's a huge difference. The energy suggests that this month isn't asking you to chase anyone. It's inviting you to continue becoming the version of yourself that naturally attracts relationships built on honesty instead of uncertainty. That feels incredibly important, because you've already spent enough time trying to understand people who weren't ready to understand themselves. You don't need to do that anymore. Then I gently turn over judgment, and I honestly have to pause for a second. This card carries such a sincere feeling. It feels like hearing your own inner voice more clearly than ever before. Not the voice of fear, not the voice of loneliness. The quiet voice that has always known what feels right. Capricorn, there may come a moment when someone stands before you with genuine intentions, or perhaps someone from your past returns carrying words they've wanted to say for a very long time. If that happens, I don't see you making a decision based only on emotion. You'll listen, you'll observe, you'll allow time to reveal whether those words become consistent actions, because your heart has learned something invaluable. Trust isn't built in one conversation. It's built through many ordinary moments that quietly prove themselves. And honestly, that's a beautiful lesson, one that no disappointment can ever take away from you. Finally, Two of Pentacles rests at the edge of the spread, almost like life placing two paths gently in front of you. Neither path feels wrong. One may lead toward rebuilding something that has truly transformed. The other may lead toward an entirely new chapter waiting just beyond the horizon. The interesting thing is that the cards don't seem interested in choosing for you. They seem much more interested in reminding you that you already have the wisdom to choose for yourself. That wisdom didn't appear overnight. It was shaped by every difficult goodbye, every unanswered message, every moment you chose healing over resentment, every time you stood back up after believing you couldn't. Capricorn, this reading doesn't feel like it's about chasing love. It feels like becoming someone who recognizes healthy love when it arrives. The energy suggests that once your standards become rooted in peace instead of fear, everything begins changing naturally. The people who only brought confusion slowly fade into the background. The ones capable of meeting you with honesty, consistency, and genuine commitment begin standing out without trying so hard. Maybe that's the real turning point these cards have been quietly leading toward all along. Not a dramatic ending, not a perfect beginning. Just a heart that finally trusts itself enough to recognize the difference. All right, Capricorn, That's where I'm going to leave this reading today. If something here resonated with your heart, I'd truly love to hear your story in the comments below. Thank you for allowing me to share this moment with you. Keep taking care of your beautiful heart, keep trusting your own timing, and remember, the right connections never ask you to become someone you're not. I appreciate every single one of you more than you know. I'll see you in the next reading. Until then, take care, and bye for now.